guys. So again, I'm Carrie Ingram with FastForward U, and on the daily 9 to 5, I call it like my Hannah Montana life, where I run FastForward U socials, but I am also a blogger and content creator when I'm not working with FastForward U. So I'm going to be sharing you guys the tips that I use for both socials, and I've broken them down into 5 lessons. The first and biggest one being finally debunking this mysterious algorithm that everyone blames for their content not working on Instagram, but also going through how you can make your feed something that people actually want to follow, how to add value and give value to people on Instagram, how to keep people on your Instagram page, and what to write on your Instagram post. So again, going over my background really quickly, I am a beauty and fashion blogger by night, a FastForward U employee by day. It's actually really funny because I feel like most of the Hopkins students who saw me in person before COVID were like, what, you actually do beauty and fashion posts? But yes, I do. And I have a background in the industry. I went to a vocational high school, so I studied cosmetology when I was younger. I'm licensed. And then throughout college, I studied mass communications. So I have a background in media in that realm. And I also worked at Sephora. I worked as a freelance makeup artist, a wedding makeup artist, the whole 9 yards. So these are the 2 industries that I'm really passionate about, and I'm also really passionate about content creation and how to do it well. So I hope that I can help you guys out. I've used these tips to grow my following on both YouTube and Instagram. I have over 14,000 followers on YouTube, over 5,000 on Instagram. Still considered to be a microblogger, but I'm going to share with you guys why that can be an advantage for you, especially if you're starting out. And I'm also going to share with you guys how you can work with brands, because even though I'm smaller, I've been able to work with brands like FFU, CoverGirl, Too Faced Cosmetics, etc. So you guys can definitely do this as well. So you're here probably because you're wondering, how the heck can I grow my own Instagram? And before I even get into my tips, I want to tell you guys the one thing that you have to overcome, and it is this idea that because Instagram is so popular, it's also oversaturated. Whether you're a brand, a business, or an individual, you have to remember that there's definitely room for everyone on Instagram. And you need to keep this in mind when you are creating your content, when you're posting it, and when you're sharing it. It can be really easy to get a little overwhelmed, especially when you're starting out, but I promise you that you have the potential to grow on Instagram just like everyone else. So with that, I'm going to talk about the biggest the problem that most people usually blame for Instagram not working for them, and it's this mysterious algorithm. And I've been there where you find your content is not growing or it's doing worse than it normally is. You're like, I'm getting less views, less likes, and it's all because Instagram keeps changing their algorithm. How dare they? But not to burst your bubble, but Instagram's algorithm is actually pretty simple. In fact, it's like any entrepreneur would make their business or product. If you're an entrepreneur, you're making a product, the 2 points of you making this product is 1, to help add some ease to someone's life, and 2, because you want people to use the product. Instagram's algorithm is the exact same thing. Their algorithm is made so that you can use their app, and it's just that simple. They reward you for using the app. So if you create content that leads your followers to using the app more and longer, your content will do better. And it's literally that simple. I know a lot of people are like, are you serious? But I promise you, once you get over that idea, everything else is a lot easier. So again, Instagram rewards content that makes people spend more time on the app. So I have a few tips for how you can do that simply. The first being to write longer captions. And this, I will say, you don't have to do with every post. It might be a little tiresome to try and think of really long captions for every post. And I'll get into with one of my tips later on how you can determine what to write for your posts and make them longer. But essentially, try not to write 2-word captions anymore. That's like 2012 Instagram. But nowadays, people will stay on your content longer if you have something important to say or something of value to them. So the longer your captions are, the more likely that will happen. Same thing goes with creating video content. If you're creating things on IGTV and Reels, you're going to have a far bigger advantage at growing than any other account that's not doing so, because people like short form video content. They'll watch it at least somewhat longer than if they were looking at your photo. And I do want to emphasize the importance of really getting onto Reels. I know that Reels and TikTok might seem like something for 12-year-olds, but honestly, it's a really easy way to grow your following. So take advantage of it while it's still new, because if you don't do it now, it's going to be a lot harder to catch up later on. My third point here is to hack your photos. It's a little harder to explain in words than in visuals, but basically when you go on Instagram and you post a photo, Instagram's automatic dimensions are a square, which everyone knows, but you do have the capability of posting a vertical photo or a horizontal photo that's slightly wider or slightly longer than normal. I always tell people the easiest hack you can do on Instagram is to always post photos that are a little longer vertically than a square, because they'll show up on the feed and take up more space on someone's feed. So they'll have to spend a little bit more time. And even if it's more of a fraction of a second of time, it'll add up. So that's a really easy way to get people to spend more time in your post. The fourth point of prompting saves, shares, and comments is something I will say multiple times tonight, but ultimately likes do not matter anymore. It's good if people like your content, but brands, if you're trying to work with them, they don't care. And if you're trying to grow, that is not the most important analytic anymore. It's whether or not people will save, share, and comment, because that means that your posts and your content are adding value to them. The last point is to just post engaging stories every single day. And I emphasize stories and not feed posts because sometimes it might be difficult, especially depending on what your account is, to post something every day. But I do encourage it if you can. But you at least want to stay consistent on stories every day, because that will keep you at the top of people's feeds who are in your warm and hot followers, which I'll explain later on. So going forward, this is just a little chart that I made of how the algorithm works, broken down, super simple. Hopefully this is easier for you guys to understand. But essentially, you will post something on Instagram, and Instagram shows it to your hot and warm followers. These are the people who already love what you're posting. So most accounts, it's going to be your family, your closest friends. If you're a business or brand, it'll be the people who already know about you and who use your products a lot or who comment on your posts a lot. They will always be the first people that Instagram shows your content to, because the algorithm knows that those people already will like your content, so they'll already use the app to see it. Once they see your content, they have to like, share, engage with your content, which they most likely will. And these are, again, are the people that are going to comment like first on like all of your posts. So that's great. And this is usually the point in which people stop growing because they don't understand the rest of the algorithm. You want to create content that's really great, especially to the hot and warm followers, enough that they like it enough that it's now shown to the next group of people on Instagram. And these people are going to be more of your warm to cool followers. These are people who follow you but might have forgotten that they follow you because they follow like 1,000 other people. But these are also people who might just have the same interest or aesthetic as your account. So Instagram will show it to these people will engage, and then your post, if it's this popular and it makes it to this point and people are still liking and engaging with your content, your post will be seen on the hashtag page if you use hashtags on your post, and on the explore page. This is where you want to be every time you post, because then Instagram will be showing your post to your cold followers, which are people who have never heard of you before, and this will help them to determine whether or not they should follow you or leave your page at all. So most people don't even get to this point on their feed, and it's basically based on your content and whether or not you're creating consistent things that your hot and warm followers will definitely like every time. If you can keep that in mind, you're most likely to get through this entire cycle and see growth over time. And again, it's really simple. It's just a matter of getting people to like your content enough to stay on the app long. So with that, I'm going to take you guys to my second point. Sorry. Oh, maybe I'm not. Okay, so what you should know about it first, again, I've already repeated these 2 points, but post content that your audience likes, and then always use Instagram's features. I know I spoke about Reels, but if you can utilize any of their features all of the time, it will make your content better on their algorithm side. So now, the second point is to make your feed irresistible to follow. And this is something that I always tell people, go in looking at this with an objective lens. It's very easy to kind of think you already know why people should follow you. But if you actually ask yourself that question, why should someone follow you? Most likely you have a really basic answer, which is, oh, because I'm providing something new, I'm showing a new product, or because I'm super cool. And that's great and all, but you can't actually be there when people tune in to your feed to give them that answer. So if I log into your feed right now, you're not going to be there to say, this is why you should follow me. Don't leave until you follow me. I'm just going to see your feed, which is why the look of your feed is the first impression that people get, and why it's so important that it looks good. So 3 points that I have for establishing your feed include identifying your niche, which is the most important thing. And this is a big problem that a lot of people have because if they're not a brand or a product, they want to focus on everything they like. And I totally get that. But like, if you're not a food blogger, you should not be posting food pictures on your Instagram feed. It just doesn't work. So I always tell people your niche should be about one topic. If you really can't find one topic, you can make it 2 topics, but no more than 2. And that just makes it easier on your hand because the content you create is so much easier because you know what you can be creating. But it will also allow people to know exactly what your feed is about when they log into your feed and check it out. And it'll give them that 2-second time to determine whether or not your feed will add value to them or if they should leave. So if you have a niche and you stick to it, it makes it a lot easier for people to process whether or not they should follow you. And if you have a brand or a product account that you're trying to grow, this is way simpler because you obviously are focusing on one thing. So just stick to your brand or your product's purpose. But if you're trying to grow your individual, pick one niche. As you grow and you have a larger following, you can totally like branch out and start posting different things. But when you're starting out, you need to have one. The second point I have on here are a list of different apps that I recommend you guys writing down if you want to grow on Instagram. And this will also help with your look and the consistency of it. When I say to be consistent with your look, I mean your color scheme, the type of language you use in your captions, the type of vibe you're going for. This will all attract people to your content. It will make your content more memorable because people will know, I see this picture, it has this color scheme, it has this font of text, it has this really cool vibe with their caption. So I already know that this post is by this person without even looking at it. The apps that I have listed are apps that I like, and all of these apps are free for you guys to use. Some of them have like paid services if you want to expand what you can utilize, but I don't pay for any of these and I get a lot of usage out of each. Planoly basically is an app that helps you to rearrange your feed before you actually post on Instagram so you can see what it looks like and you can see what posts look good next to each other. Snapseed I use for creating a filter on my post that they all look the same. They have the same color scheme or the same brightness. And Snapseed has a lot of cool features, but my favorite thing about it is that once you edit one photo, it saves all of those edits so then you can just apply it. So I like Snapseed because I'm lazy and it allows me to just upload a photo, press one button, and it looks the same as the rest of them. And then Over and Unfold are 2 really good apps if you want to make your story just as aesthetically pleasing as your feed. You can do really cool things, add backgrounds to your story posts that you share on Instagram. And again, these are all free, so I recommend checking them out to see if they work for you. And then again, my last point here is just to be objective. It's really easy to consistently say in your head and know what you want to post and what you want your feed to look like. But every time that you create content, especially for your feed content, make sure that you're thinking about your audience and thinking about whether or not this is something that they'll like to see. So I have 2 examples, the first being good, and then I'm going to show you 2 bad examples. But these are 2 accounts that I actually follow, and I really appreciate their feeds because you can tell they thought them through. So the first one is a career account, the second one, cosmetics. This cosmetic account actually is a cosmetic brand founded here for women of color, but they both do really good jobs of making sure that their niche is clear. The official career queen account, if you don't even read the name of the account, you can kind of tell that it's just going to give you educational content about how to further your career. The cosmetics account, it's obviously a cosmetics account. And the color schemes on point, and they have consistent posts for both of them, but I did note that they're mixed throughout. And I'll mention this more in the next slide, which is about bad feeds. So I spared the names of these because I didn't want to just like put people out there, but I will say the first feed example is one of my friends, and I actually scrolled way down on her feed. She's a blogger and she does a phenomenal job now. But these are some of her older posts, and these posts are great. You can kind of tell that she's a blogger, but the way her feed is laid out is the problem. So she has a picture of her holding a drink and then a picture in a leather jacket, and it might seem simple, but like looking at her feed overall, I wouldn't necessarily know exactly what the point of her blog is about. I would just know that she wants to be an influencer, but I don't know what value that adds to me as a viewer. She doesn't have a consistent color scheme, but the thing about the mixed post is her bottom corner here. You can have posts that have the same color, multiple pictures that are taken at the same time of you posing, but if you do that, you want to make sure that they are not next to each other on your feed because your eye will automatically go to these areas and you won't know how to process it, and it doesn't look as appealing as if they're spread apart. So her having these 3 photos here really kind of detracts from the overall look of her feed. The same can be said with this account. They have quotes, which are great, but like you can tell that they pretty much pulled them from different places. So there's no real consistency to their look. And it might be easy to know what their account is about because it's motivational quotes, but it's just not something that is as appealing. So as someone who's looking at accounts, I'm way more likely to follow these two accounts on a first view, first impression basis than these two accounts. So these are just examples of you guys to know, especially because I wanted to use my friend's account because I know a lot of people who are trying to grow as individuals, they do this type of thing where they have like a whole bunch of selfies next to each other. And it's like, that's great. But if you space them out, it'll look even better. Alrighty, my third tip is to stand out by giving value. This is one of the biggest things of how you can grow on Instagram. And it's basically because on Instagram, it's a social media site and it's almost an instinct for people to want to post about themselves and just to share their own story. And that's great because people do like people, but people also like help. People like to have something being given to them. They like to learn. They like to get something out of using Instagram. So if you're not giving them value and you're just giving them information about you, it kind of poses the question as to what is the point of following you? Why should I know about you? And as much as I hate to say this, as much as people might not like the Kardashians, they may have their own problems, but part of their success is because they do kind of add value in their post, even though most of their posts are about themselves, whether it's them recommending things that they use or them sharing a personal story. And that's essentially what you want to do, regardless of whether or not your Instagram account is for an individual content creation side or for a brand or product. The benefit of adding value for you is that it helps you stand out. Again, likes are not nearly as valuable as shares, saves, and comments. But if you're adding value in your captions and your post, people are going to save those because they either want to remember what you're saying or they'll share them because they identify with what you're saying. And that is going to help you in the long run with the algorithm. It also allows you to form deeper connections with your followers because they can actually engage with you. They know a little bit more about you, or they feel like you're helping them. So they feel like they're connected to you rather than them viewing you talking about yourself. And again, those things essentially drive higher engagement and help you in the long run. So a good value example, this is one of my favorite bloggers to follow on Instagram. Her name is Christina Galbato. She actually is a really good source of information about social media herself, but she's a travel content creator. And I love her post because I don't travel often, and especially not in COVID days, but she really does break down how to give value in all of her captions by microblogging, which is essentially doing a blog post, but in fewer words to post on Instagram. So this is just one example of her. She recently traveled to Mexico during COVID, so she decided to put that in a caption and break down the pros and cons of her experience traveling to Mexico. And this adds value because the people who are following her are going to get these tips. And because she's providing such specific tips about something like this, she's more likely to have people save it if they're thinking about traveling in the future, or to share it if they've had similar experiences rather than people just liking this. She also does have a longer caption by doing this, which I'll get into in our last point. But she prompts conversation by asking questions throughout these tips, and she encourages people to engage with her content. And as long as you're doing this consistently with every one of your posts and adding this value for whatever your topic is, you'll see that your engagement will increase over time rather than people just simply liking something because they're not getting anything out of it. My fourth tip is to create content that will attract collaborations. And this one is super cool, but to break it down, there's two different collaborations I'll talk about. The first being collaborating with brands and accounts that are much larger than you, and then also collaborating with people who are on the same playing field as you. But regardless of what type of collaboration you may be going for on Instagram, in order to grow, you need to remember that in the business world, you might have competitors, competition, but on Instagram, you do not. Competition, we don't know her. Competition is not something you want to look at anyone in your niche on Instagram as, because anyone who's doing something similar to you on Instagram can be the people that you're working with in order to grow. And as long as you have this mentality, you're more likely to grow on Instagram because you're not going to be sticking in your own corner. And you'll be surprised how many people are actually willing to collaborate with you no matter what field you're on, no matter what size your account is. So if you're trying to work with accounts that are larger, my biggest advice is to create content for your page that matches their content and then tag them in it or interact with their content a lot rather than trying to reach out to them specifically, because sometimes that might be a little bit more difficult. This obviously applies more for if you're looking for growing an individual Instagram account, but if you're a brand and a business, then you probably want to collaborate with other accounts that are similar to yours and are on the same playing field. And for this, I just say literally don't be shy, DM people, send them your email, and really interact with these people, because you can make connections easily through social media. That's the whole point anyways, is to make connections. So don't be shy. And I have firsthand experience of collaborating with people who are on the same level, but I also wanted to showcase you guys one example that I have of a brand that I was like super psyched to work with, that I didn't anticipate would work with me because of their size. There's a brand called Kitsch. They sell at Ulta Beauty at a lot of stores, and they make hair tools and like really cool gadgets and things that are aesthetically pleasing and also help with the health of your hair. But they're also really overpriced. And as someone who is a normal human being on this planet, I don't have a wallet made out of money. So I had one product by them, and it was a pink silk scarf that I wore to bed to protect my curls. But I really appreciated their brand and everything that they had. So you guys saw in my intro slide, I had my feed, and my feed aesthetic is usually very pink based. But I really wanted to work with Kitsch, and I knew if I reached out to them, it wasn't going to happen. So I actually looked at their feed, and you can see they have quotes, but they also have posts where it's mainly like muted in the background, and then they might have like a splash of color or a person. So I tried to do the same thing, but still stick with my aesthetic. So I still had my overall fashion aesthetic that I have. I included Chester, the cutest dog in the world. I had the scarf. And I wrote a caption that was kind of gearing people towards that, but also just the same post. So when you're looking at it and you're one of my followers, it just seemed like a normal post, but I tagged them in it, and they actually DM'd me right after, and they sent me more products. So not only did I not have to pay for anything, but I got to continue to work with them, and they continuously send me things that they are launching. And that was all from me just creating quality content that matches theirs and tagging them in it. So this is a really good example of how you can get the attention of a brand and not have to harass them in the DMs if they're larger than you, but in order for you to grow. And the result of them seeing this post and interacting with me has been me getting more attention on my Instagram and getting more followers. So if you can be open to putting in the work to have quality content, you can collaborate with people bigger than you, and you can do something similar if you want to collaborate with people on the same playing field. My last and final tip, I know I've given you guys a lot, so thank you for bearing with me, is that the copy matters on Instagram. The words that you put on your Instagram matters, and I think a lot of people forget about this too because it's such a visual platform, but I wanted to break down 2 different points in which you can kind of take advantage of the words you put on your post. The first being your bio. There's a lot of funny memes about basic bios and how you can know exactly who a person is by like the first 3 things they have in their bio. So you don't want to be one of those people, especially if you're trying to grow your account. These tips, again, do apply for both individual accounts and also if you have a brand or business. So if you have an individual account, obviously put your name, but if it's a business, you put your business title. And then if you can find out what your title is, use that in your Instagram. I personally hate seeing influencers, so if you're on here to grow as an individual, please don't use that. Please use like digital content creator or something else, because the biggest question you'll be asked is who are you influencing and why? So if you create content, I love digital creator way more, but if you are a med tech company or business, obviously you put that as your title. The other important things are to have a niche or a summary in your bio, but it should be very short. You can do longer than I have in my bio, but I just don't like writing about myself, so that's why I kept it pretty short. But you also want to make sure you absolutely have your email address in your bio, and you have an important link in your bio as well and a call out for it. These are like the most important things. They don't have to be necessarily in this order, but you just want to include this so that it makes it a lot easier for the people who are following you and interacting with your page to learn more about you, to know that you'll add value to them in a quick way, but also to know if they want to contact you, they can. So as you can see, I put beauty blogger and content creator as my niche and summary because it's the simplest way I can. And then I also did include my email and like a little call out here for my YouTube link. So you want to do something similar for your brand. If you're starting out and your brand is early on and you don't have a website, try and think of a link that might work better. So you could put a LinkedIn for your brand or your business. You could put in an article link if you were featured somewhere, but try not to leave this empty. And if you don't have a website, I guess you should make one, especially if you're planning on growing as a business. But if you're in the early stages, again, still try and think of a link that you can put here instead. As far as captions go, I also have 4 points on this for your copy. And this will help with you creating longer captions as well and avoiding the 2-word captions. So I have two examples of different captions I have on my Instagram just to showcase to you guys, but essentially your caption should either give some educational value where you're giving people information that they'll want to utilize, or it should have some type of relatable aspect to it, to telling a story, telling something that's funny, something that's emotional, something that you recently did, or a milestone, something that people will say, this is a human behind this account, I want to learn more. So these are two really essential things that you should always put in your caption. And then every now and then you might have a picture that you're like, I have no idea what to caption this. Those are great for the like one-liners that are funny, but otherwise you should have some information here. But the way you organize it is important as well. So I always tell people organize it like you would an article. So always have an eye-catching first line, and usually Instagram will help you out. It'll be one of your homies. Well, if you put your first line in, it will say the read more right after. So usually Instagram kind of knows what you're going for. So if you have the eye-catching first line, it'll allow people to click on your account. And then you can have your story or your advice. But I also recommend making it in paragraphs. So the right, I actually would never do this again. This is one of my older posts, but I would probably split this up into about 2 or 3 other paragraphs to make it easier to read, because even if people are going to read the same amount, it will make them more likely to stay and read longer than if they have this huge paragraph. So I actually wouldn't recommend doing what I did on the right. I'd recommend more so doing what I did on the left. And I use periods on this because I usually write all of my captions directly on the Instagram app. The only way to separate paragraphs on Instagram is to do this. However, if you use the Planoly app, you can schedule your post. And if you do use that app, you don't have to use periods to have spaces in between your paragraphs. So that's just something to note. But also on your post, make sure you have a call to action at the very end. So if you're giving advice or you're telling a story, have a question or something that will more so prompt people to engage with your post at the end. So that way you're more likely to get that engagement rather than them just reading and then leaving. So with that being said, that is all of my tips, my 5 tips for going on Instagram.